Paula Pete Woods here, coming to you once again with One Piece chapter 1187 entitled The Cause. And we have a very prophetic art request this week because Reiju is holding an ugly duckling that looks like Sanji, and she is protecting it from a bunch of swans that looks like Sanji's brothers and father. So Judge, Ichiji, Niji, and Yanji, right? So moving on with our chapter, we are greeted to where we left off, in which Luffy is punching out Imu and sends them flying right past Loki, which is crazy. However, Imu prepares these little black fireballs with faces on them and flicks them towards Loki and Luffy. And they don't seem to be hot. They seem to be seeker bullets or targets of some sort for Imu to follow up with an attack called Stigma, but it's also called Resentful Demon Sword. And when they do follow up with an attack, they do the OK symbol with their fingers, and a little bell on fire appears. So I guess that whole bit back when they first touched down on Elbaf, and that sound rang out and all the buildings became possessed and whatnot, and the trees too, I guess those were the drums of subjugation, because it's weird now that Imu is sound-based like Luffy when he enters Gear 5. So that's really weird. So the sword actually just strikes Loki straight through, which is crazy. And before that, he was talking about how he's not winded and Luffy has a lot of nerve for telling him to relax a bit. So yeah, Loki is struck through, but before he's struck through, it seems like the two flames are communicating amongst themselves as they spread across Loki's body. So this is very much like the Soul fruit, just not as permanent. Very odd, but then again, I've always said that Imu is a Zoan, and Zoans have the powers of paramecia fruits. So this, again, is not really out of the ordinary. It's just kind of weird to see, especially seeing the attack talk amongst itself. Very strange. But yeah, he goes flying into the block of ice that Gunko is encased in. And while he's flying towards that block of ice, the rest of the Straw Hats are trying to free Gunko, like we left off with last chapter as they were discussing it. And they're discussing how hard the ice is, and Frankie mentions it's more like diamond than ice, which excites Nami, which is very funny. I love when a gag stays intact. That's very good. And they also comment that the ice isn't really cold, or they're unsure of the coldness. And here is another gag, because both Frankie and Brooke inspect the ice, touching it, and are unsure of its coldness. But that's when Nami retorts and says, "Enough, you non-humans just can't tell. It's definitely cold." But yeah, that's where Loki crashes into the ice block, and Ragnar falls out of his hand and thunks on top of said ice block. So it's weird, because it was mentioned earlier that Ragnar was the only one who could melt the ice. I didn't know melting the ice just meant he needed to come in contact with the ice again, no matter what form he's in. I don't know. I just didn't expect that. That's quite odd, but that's what happens. And these Straw Hats comment on how weird it is that Loki was beaten, and Ragnar jumps to Loki's aid, frightened that his friend has been very, very injured. But yes, the ice begins to melt. So Princess Shuri or Gunko will be freed, which is also very interesting how conveniently that happened. But yeah, the flames that were on Luffy begin to react to the ring, which that's weird too, there's a ring of Imu's weird bell flame, and Imu makes good on the attack, but Luffy tosses off his cape just in time, and a big pillar of fire, or I guess the sword, actually manifests and strikes where the flame was manifested originally. And from the little sound note here, I guess the attack makes a chime when it goes off. At least that's what I'm getting from what we've been seeing here. But moving towards the Sea Cloud Port in the West Village, we have a confrontation between Somers, powered up by Imu's Omen, and Zoro. And they trash talk back and forth. And what is very touching about this is that Summer says, "Oh, sorry about that. We're just here to pick up 10 or 20 kids at most. My associate should be bringing them over from the village any minute now. Then we'll be out of your hair." As Zoro first says that they were actually having a feast with their old friends. But Zoro then responds after Summers makes his comment and says, "Is that so? What a coincidence. One of my associates is also swinging by the village, but I don't think your guy will be the one coming back." And Summers asks, "Oh, may I ask why?" And Zoro finishes and says, "Because he'll be dead." That's amazing. The undercurrent of this is that he has so much confidence in Sanji. And I love that. I love that. I love when this happens. And that, of course, erupts into a confrontation between Summers and Zoro. And Summers laughs. "Yeah, you really have no idea just how awesome we are now because they've been powered up by Emu." And the whip of thorns that he manifests looks like it's coated in armament Haki, which makes a lot of sense. And it appears as though Zoro's counter is also coated in armament Haki, which again makes a lot of sense. So yeah, that's super interesting because we know that Summers is in trouble already because Zoro already has a handle of Conqueror's Haki. So, I guess we're going to see a bit of a dual awakening here, or a dual expression of Conqueror's, but I'll hold off on that. We gotta get to that part. Okay, so in the West Village, where Zaza is attacking, the situation is pretty bleak. And Sanji is assessing the situation and says, "Problem 1, a monster bigger than any giant is trying to kidnap the kids. That's a pain to deal with. Their mothers are crying their eyes out, and I can't stand the sight of it, but I can't save the brats myself because of problem 2. That monster is a woman. I can't kick it. That's another pain to deal with." I thought that was going to be a problem. I thought he would identify the monster as a woman pretty immediately. So we were right on that. I can't remember which video I said it in, but I did say that. I thought that was going to be an issue when it was made clear that Sanji was going to be taking care of this scenario. But then he continues, "And the warriors won't stop at anything until the kids are safe." Then there's problem 3. While I can't stand to see a woman cry, it's okay if I don't join their fight, because I know the cause of all of this is really you. And he attacks Killingham. "Even if the giants lose sight of you, you can't outrun me." That's so sick. And Killingham is in one of his many hybrid states. I swear he's had like how many? At least 2. There has never been a full beast state with him yet in the manga. He's got the weird Kieran head form, where he's a, I guess, reverse centaur, and now he's a proper centaur. It's so strange. He's one of the strangest Zoan fruit users we've seen so far, because his hybrids are weird. We've never seen somebody turn into like a beast guy, but then turn into a centaur. That's never happened before. So odd. But Killingham goes on to say, "Good grief, you really are tough." Sanji retorts, "I'm ending this here." But Killingham interrupts and says, "You fool. There's a big difference between tough and immortal. There's no way you can beat me. Your assessment is right, though. If I were to be out of commission, my ability would dissipate." So his ability is very much like a bunch of paramecia abilities we've seen in the past, like Sugar's, which makes sense because, again, mythical Zoans have abilities similar to paramecias. So it would make sense they kind of go under the same rules, more or less. And you know what's weird? Now, looking at him here, there is a bit of a change that I'm noticing. Because when he first appears, and when he appears in color for the first time, I forgot on which cover he appears on, but his Hagoromo is white when he appears earlier on in Elbaf, but now it is black. So I wonder, was that a mistake? Because why is it black now? It's been white for the longest time. Now the clouds that he's floating on are white, which is similar to what Kaido and Momonosuke could do, I think, with the whole flame cloud situation. It seems to be something akin to that. but maybe it's just on his body all the time when he's in this kind of hybrid state, because the other one, it doesn't seem like he can fly. So maybe he needs to have the lower body of the Kirin in order to levitate or fly. Maybe that's the case, because in the other hybrid state, these clouds don't appear. So I'm not sure what's going on with that. He's such a weird situation. But his ability works like a paramecia fruit ability. And that's when Sanji says, "I know your weakness," which makes Killingham laugh and say, oh, how interesting. So you're saying you can use Conqueror's Haki. And then he stabs Sanji into some buildings with his weird trident weapon, which I don't know what's up with the trident here, because it seems like it's like a regular spear. So I'm not sure if he can just change the shape of it with his abilities, and it seems to be coated in the Hagoramo cloud manifestation that's on his back. So don't know what's up with that attack. But that is when, as Sanji is crashing into the buildings, he has a flashback of when Gaban was talking about Conqueror's Haki way back in the earlier parts of Elbaf, because it goes on to say, with Gaban speaking, "Your captain is one of the 4 emperors. You should be meticulous if you intend to have his back." And that's when Zoro says, "My bad." And that is when Sanji asks Gaban, "Do I really not have Conqueror's Haki?" And Gaban says, "You have the traits of one who might." Sanji responds, "Really?" But that's when Gaban responds, "But somehow, I get the impression you burden yourself with a painful uncertainty. For it to manifest, one must be a king." And that's when Sanji thinks, Luffy. He truly wants to be Pirate King with all his heart. And that is when we are greeted with a scene of Luffy in Gear 5th facing off against Emu, and Emu says, "So thou hast finally revealed thyself, Joy Boy." Luffy does not take kindly to that and says, "Don't go calling me whatever you want. The name's Luffy, the man who's going to be king of the pirates." All right. So what an interesting chapter. I do think that we're going to get a double Conqueror's Haki reveal in this fight with Zoro and Sanji. I don't think we're going to pass on that. I think that's going to happen. Summers, I believe, is going to be in immediate trouble because Zoro already has a handle on it. But I can't wait to see how Conqueror's manifests for Sanji. And I got another video coming up about Sanji's opponents because I noticed a very interesting pattern, but I won't spoil that here. So very good chapter. No break next week, which is also good. And I'm really digging this setup. And I always believed that Sanji would get Conqueror's Haki. Not a doubt in my mind, but I will say the bricks are being stacked against Jinbei here, because if he's truly the third, and nothing's going to happen to him, where does that leave him after this? Just a thought. I don't know if the Holy Knights of Somers and Killingham will be straight up murdered here, or just severely damaged or injured, but we can expect a big bounty boost from this arc. That's what I'm seeing. And especially for Luffy, seeing as how he's facing off against Emu of all people. So we will see what happens. No break next week. Happy about that. But if you are enjoying the video so far, click the like button. And if you want to see more from me, hit the subscribe button, followed by that bell so you never miss a video. In addition to, if you could, hit the hype button because it really does help. With that being said, give me your thoughts and tell your friends about Polypede Works.